You make me feel my age, Nola said, her voice carrying that particular brand of exhaustion reserved for conversations about our marriage. She stood in our kitchen doorway, yoga mat tucked under one arm, water bottle in the other hand like a weapon she might actually use. I looked up from my laptop where spreadsheets glowed with the enthusiasm of a funeral home. Project deadlines waited for no marital crisis, and Hartwell Systems didn't pay me to solve relationship problems, just network infrastructure ones. Good morning to you too, sunshine, I replied, fingers still moving across the keyboard. Coffee's fresh if you want some. She made that sound, half sigh, half snort, that had become her signature response to anything I suggested. Coffee makes me jittery. I'm trying to cut back on stimulants. Right. Forgot about your new health kick. It's not a kick, Rowan. It's a lifestyle change. Some of us actually care about staying vital. There it was. Vital. The word she'd been throwing around like confetti at a midlife crisis party. Everything had to be vital now. Her smoothies were vital. Her workout schedule was vital. Her new cycling instructor was apparently very vital. Speaking of vital, I said, closing the laptop with more force than necessary. How was yesterday's training session with... what's his name again? Kai. She said it like she was tasting expensive wine. And it was amazing. He's really helping me push past my comfort zone. I bet he was. 27 years old, abs that could grate cheese, and the kind of easy smile that made middle-aged women forget they had mortgages and responsibilities. I'd seen him exactly once when I picked Nola up from the studio, all golden retriever energy and protein shake enthusiasm. That's great, honey, really great. I stood up, grabbing my coffee mug. I should get to work. Some of us have to maintain our vitality through steady employment. Her laugh held no warmth. You know what I mean, Rowan. You've gotten so settled, so comfortable with being comfortable. Comfortable pays for the yoga classes and the organic groceries and the apartment with the view you love so much. It's not about money. She shifted the yoga mat to her other arm. It's about energy, passion. When's the last time you did something that scared you? Something that made you feel alive? I wanted to tell her that watching our marriage dissolve in real time was plenty scary, thanks. That lying awake at night, wondering when she'd finally work up the courage to leave, was more excitement than I needed. Instead, I rinsed my mug in the sink and watched the coffee swirl down the drain. I'll work on being more vital, I said. Maybe take up extreme accounting, really live on the edge. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Her voice rose half an octave. Everything's a joke to you. Everything's sarcasm and deflection. And everything's my fault. Don't forget that part. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in her expression. Not anger exactly, but something colder, more final. I'm going to class, she said. Don't wait up. We're doing a recovery ride afterward. The door closed behind her with a soft click that somehow felt louder than slamming would have been. I stood in our kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of a life we'd built together. Her fancy blender, my coffee maker, the refrigerator covered in photos from better times, and wondered when exactly I'd become the villain in my own story. My phone buzzed. Text from Danny Martinez, my only remaining friend, who still found my cynicism amusing rather than exhausting. Drinks tonight? Jessica's working late and I need someone to remind me why marriage is worth it. I typed back, can't tonight, have to work on being more vital. What the hell does that mean? Ask me in 6 months. I'll either be enlightened or divorced. Smart money's on divorced. See you at Murphy's at 7. Danny had a point. Smart money was definitely on divorced. The question was whether I'd go down fighting or just roll over and let Nola and her vital new lifestyle steamroll whatever was left of us. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Hartwell Systems awaited, along with the comforting predictability of server maintenance and user complaints. At least computers were honest about their problems. When they crashed, they didn't blame you for making them feel their age. The Hartwell Systems office occupied 3 floors of a glass building that looked impressive from the outside and felt like a corporate fishbowl from within. I'd been their senior IT project manager for 8 years, long enough to know which coffee machines actually worked and which conference rooms had decent cell reception. "You look terrible," Ayla Derrick announced as I settled into my cubicle. She occupied the workspace next to mine, a brilliant systems analyst who somehow managed to make troubleshooting network issues seem like an art form. "Good morning to you too, sunshine." I powered up my workstation, watching the familiar startup sequence that never judged my life choices. "Seriously, Rowan, you look like someone ran over your dog. Twice." "No dog, just a wife who thinks I make her feel ancient." Ayla leaned back in her chair, studying me with the same intensity she usually reserved for corrupted databases. At 31, she had the kind of sharp intelligence that made her dangerous in meetings and the kind of dry wit that made her excellent company during long debugging sessions. "Let me guess," she said. "She's found something more exciting than your sparkling personality and devastating good looks. Cycling instructor, 27, probably has a six-pack you could serve dinner on." Ah, the classic midlife upgrade. How very original of her. I appreciated Ayla's complete lack of sympathy. Most people wanted to offer advice or comfort when marriages imploded. Ayla just called it like she saw it, which made her the perfect person to talk to when your world was quietly falling apart. "The best part," I continued, pulling up my email, "is that it's all my fault for being too comfortable, too settled, not vital enough." Vital? Her new favorite word. Everything has to be vital now. Her smoothies, her workout routine, her 27-year-old cycling instructor. "What's his name?" "Kai, like the dog food." Ayla snorted. "Of course it is, let me guess. He's all about living in the moment and finding your authentic self through cardio." "You've met him?" "I've met the type. They're like golden retrievers with better abs and worse conversation skills." My phone buzzed with a text from Nola. "Late session tonight. Don't wait dinner." I showed the screen to Ayla, who raised an eyebrow. "Late session on a Tuesday? That's dedication to fitness." "Yeah, real dedicated." Something in my tone must have caught her attention because she rolled her chair closer to my desk. "Rowan, you don't actually think she's cheating, do you? I mean, really cheating?" The question hung in the air between us like a network timeout error. Technically possible, but nobody wanted to deal with it. "I don't know," I said finally. "Maybe. Probably. Does it matter if she's physically cheating or just emotionally checked out?" "It matters for the divorce proceedings." Leave it to Ayla to cut straight to the practical implications. This was why I liked her. No drama, no false comfort, just clear-eyed assessment of the situation. "I'm not ready to think about divorce yet." "But you are ready to think about whether she's sleeping with Captain Cardio." She had a point. I was thinking about it. Had been thinking about it for weeks, actually, ever since Nola's training schedule had become more complicated than my project timelines. "You know," Ayla said, turning back to her computer, "if you really want to know what she's up to, there are ways to find out. Digital footprints and all that. I'm not going to spy on my wife." I didn't say spy. I said investigate. There's a difference. Which is? Spying is when you sneak around looking for evidence. Investigating is when you pay attention to information that's already available. I stared at my computer screen, cursor blinking in an empty search field like it was waiting for me to make a decision. Ayla was right. There were ways to find out what Nola was really doing during those extended training sessions. Social media, credit card statements, location data, if I really wanted to go down that rabbit hole. "Hypothetically," I said, "what kind of information would already be available?" Ayla's fingers flew across her keyboard, pulling up what looked like a tutorial on digital privacy. "Hypothetically, shared accounts, family phone plans, social media activity, Photo metadata, fitness app data. Amazing how much people document their own lives without realizing it. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Nola. Might grab drinks after. Team building with the other cyclists. Team building, right. Hypothetically, I said again, how would someone go about checking photo metadata? Ayla smiled, and it wasn't entirely friendly. Now you're asking the right questions. The beauty of being married to someone for 12 years is that you share everything: bank accounts, streaming passwords, and most importantly, cloud storage. Nola had never been particularly tech-savvy, which meant she'd never bothered to change the default settings on her photo backup. I sat in my car outside the cycling studio at 9:30 p.m., laptop balanced on my steering wheel, connected to the coffee shop Wi-Fi next door. Nola's training session had supposedly ended at 8. Her car wasn't in the parking lot. This is pathetic, I muttered, clicking through folder after folder of automatically backed-up photos. I'm sitting in a parking lot like some kind of private investigator in a bad movie. But pathetic or not, the photos told a story. Nola at the cycling studio, glowing with post-workout endorphins. Nola and Kai in what looked like a smoothie bar, his hand resting casually on her shoulder. Nola in workout clothes I'd never seen before, expensive-looking athletic wear that definitely hadn't come from our joint checking account. The metadata was even more interesting. Photos taken at times when she'd told me she was in training sessions, but the location stamps showed addresses across town. A hotel bar, a restaurant I'd never heard of, an apartment complex in the trendy part of the city where cycling instructors could probably afford to live. My phone rang. Danny. Where are you? I've been waiting at Murphy's for an hour. I'd completely forgotten about drinks. Sorry, man. Something came up. Something involving your wife and Captain Cardio? How did you? Lucky guess. Plus, you sound like someone who just found out their suspicions were right. Want to talk about it? I looked at my laptop screen, where a photo of Nola and Kai sharing what appeared to be an intimate dinner stared back at me. The timestamp showed last Thursday, when she'd told me she was having a girls' night with Linda. She's cheating, I said. The words felt strange in my mouth, like speaking a foreign language. Not just emotionally, actually cheating. You sure? I'm looking at photos of them together, dates, basically. Times when she told me she was doing other things. Danny was quiet for a moment. What are you going to do? Good question. What was I going to do? Confront her? Pretend I didn't know? Start looking for divorce lawyers? I don't know yet. Well, while you're figuring it out, you should probably know that Linda was at Murphy's earlier. She seemed pretty interested in whether you'd be showing up tonight. Linda. Nola's best friend, enabler, and probably co-conspirator in whatever story they'd cooked up to explain the extended training sessions. What did you tell her? That you were working on being more vital. She looked confused. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Thanks. Rowan, whatever you decide to do, don't do anything stupid. Divorce is expensive enough without adding assault charges. I'm not going to hit anyone, Danny. I didn't say hit. I said stupid. There are lots of ways to be stupid that don't involve violence. He had a point. I closed the laptop and started the car. Time to go home and pretend I didn't know what I knew, at least until I figured out what came next. Nola's car was in our parking spot when I got home, which meant she'd beaten me back from wherever she'd actually been. The apartment was dark except for the glow from her phone in the bedroom. Hey, she called softly as I came through the door. How was your evening? Quiet. Worked late. I hung my keys on the hook by the door, muscle memory from 12 years of shared domestic routine. How was team building? Good, really good. We went to this great little place downtown, very energizing. Energizing. Another one of her new vocabulary words, right up there with vital and authentic. That's nice, I said, heading for the kitchen. I'm going to grab some water. You need anything? I'm good. Just tired. All that cardio, you know? I knew, all right. I opened the refrigerator and stared at its contents without seeing them, my mind still processing the evening's discoveries. Photos didn't lie. Metadata didn't lie. But apparently, my wife of 12 years had gotten very comfortable with lying. The question was what I planned to do about it. Friday morning brought rain and the kind of gray sky that matched my mood perfectly. Nola was already gone when I woke up. Another early training session, according to the note she'd left on the kitchen counter. Her handwriting looked the same as always, but now I read different meanings into every word. Back around noon. Lunch with Linda after. Don't wait up. N. Don't wait up. For lunch. Right. I made coffee and opened my laptop, pulling up the photo timeline I'd been building. 3 months of documentation once you knew what to look for. The progression was almost artistic in its clarity. Casual group photos giving way to intimate dinners, training sessions becoming overnight disappearances. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. This is awkward, but I thought you should know. Saw Nola with some guy last night at Meridian Bar. Looked pretty cozy. Beth from accounting. Beth from accounting. I barely knew her beyond casual hallway greetings, but apparently office gossip traveled faster than I'd realized. If people were starting to notice, Nola and Kai weren't being as discreet as they thought. I stared at the text for a long moment, then typed back, "Thanks for the heads up. Sorry, man. Really awkward position to be in. Don't worry about it. I appreciate the honesty." More honesty than I was getting at home anyway. I forwarded the text to Danny with a note. The word is spreading. His response came back immediately. Time to make some decisions. He was right. Sitting in parking lots and analyzing photo metadata was just elaborate procrastination. Eventually, I'd have to actually deal with the situation. I called in sick to work, first time in 2 years, and spent the morning doing something I should have done months ago. I made copies of everything: bank statements, credit card bills, photos, text messages from Beth, and probably others who'd seen Nola and Kai together. If this was heading toward divorce court, I wanted documentation. Around 11, I drove to the cycling studio. Not to spy this time, but to see if I could have a conversation with Kai. Man to man, adult to adult. Find out exactly what he thought he was doing with my wife. The studio occupied the ground floor of a converted warehouse, all exposed brick and motivational posters. Through the windows, I could see a class in progress, 20 people pedaling furiously, while an instructor shouted encouragement over pounding music. The instructor wasn't Kai. "Can I help you?" A young woman at the front desk looked up from her computer. Her name tag read Jessica, and she had the kind of aggressively healthy glow that suggested she drank wheatgrass smoothies for fun. "I'm looking for Kai Dornell. Is he teaching today?" "Kai? He's not scheduled until this afternoon. Are you interested in signing up for one of his classes?" "Something like that. When does his afternoon session start?" 3 o'clock. Intermediate level. Would you like me to put you on the list?" I almost said yes, just to see the look on Kai's face when I showed up in his class. Instead, I shook my head. "I'll catch him another time." Back in my car, I sat for a moment trying to decide what came next. 3 hours until Kai's class. 3 hours to figure out exactly what I wanted to say to him, and to Nola and to myself about what kind of man I was going to be in this situation. My phone rang. Nola. "Hey," she said, and I could hear traffic in the background. "I know I said lunch with Linda, but we're thinking about making it a spa afternoon. You know, full wellness experience." "Sounds expensive." "It's an investment in self-care. I really need this, Rowan. Things have been so stressful lately." "Stressful?" "Right. Maintaining 2 relationships probably was exhausting." "Sure," I said. "Have fun. I'll probably work late anyway." "You're the best. Love you." The line went quiet, and I stared at my phone. "Love you," said with the same casual tone she used to remind me to pick up milk. When had those words become just noise between us? I had 3 hours to spare and a decision to make. I could go home, pretend this conversation never happened, and keep living in the comfortable fiction that my marriage was just going through a rough patch. Or I could drive to Meridian Bar, where Beth from accounting had seen my wife with another man, and start asking questions. The rain had stopped, and pale sunlight was trying to break through the clouds. I started the car and headed downtown. Time to stop being comfortable with being comfortable. Meridian Bar occupied a corner spot in the trendy district, the kind of place that served $15 cocktails and played jazz music just loud enough to seem sophisticated. I'd never been there before. Too expensive for my taste, too pretentious for Nola's, or so I'd thought. "Can I help you?" The bartender looked like he'd stepped out of a men's fashion magazine, all carefully sculpted facial hair and artfully rolled sleeves. "I'm looking for information about a couple who might be regulars here. My wife and her friend." He raised an eyebrow. "We don't really discuss our customers, sir." I pulled out my phone, showing him one of the photos from Nola's cloud storage. "This was taken here last week. I'm not looking for gossip. I just want to know if they come in often." The bartender glanced at the photo, and something shifted in his expression. Recognition, maybe, or just the uncomfortable realization that he was being pulled into someone else's domestic drama. "Look, man, I don't want to get involved in whatever this is. I'm not asking you to get involved. I'm asking if you've seen them." He was quiet for a moment, polishing a glass that already looked clean. "Yeah, I've seen them. They come in maybe once a week. Always sit at that corner table." He nodded toward a spot by the window. "Always very affectionate." Affectionate. The word hit harder than it should have. I'd suspected, had evidence, had built a timeline of deception, but hearing it confirmed by a stranger made it real in a way that photos couldn't. "How long?" I asked. "Couple months, maybe? Started noticing them around the beginning of summer?" Beginning of summer. Right around the time Nola had started her fitness transformation and begun talking about feeling vital. "Thanks," I said, leaving a 20 on the bar. "I appreciate the honesty." "Hey man, I'm sorry. This sucks." It did suck, but at least now I knew exactly how much. I drove back to the cycling studio, arriving just as Kai's 3 o'clock class was ending. Through the windows, I watched him high-fiving participants as they filed out, all smiles and encouragement. He looked younger than 27, with the kind of easy confidence that came from never having to worry about mortgage payments or marriage counseling. I waited until the last student left, then walked through the front door. "We're closed for cleaning between classes," Jessica called from behind the desk. "I'm here to see Kai, just need a quick word." Kai emerged from the studio, toweling sweat from his face. When he saw me, his expression shifted from friendly instructor mode to something more guarded. "Can I help you?" "I'm Rowan, Nola's husband." The towel stopped moving. For a moment, we just looked at each other, the husband and the cycling instructor, separated by about 15 years and a shared woman who'd apparently decided she needed more than one man in her life. "Oh," Kai said finally. "Okay." I was hoping we could have a conversation, adult to adult. He glanced toward Jessica, who was suddenly very interested in her computer screen, then back to me. "What kind of conversation?" "The kind where you explain to me what exactly you think you're doing with my wife." "Look, man, I don't want any trouble." "Neither do I. I just want some answers." Kai set down his towel and crossed his arms, a gesture that might have been defensive or might have been an attempt to look intimidating. On someone his age, it just looked petulant. "Nola and I are friends," he said. "We train together. Sometimes we grab food after. It's not a big deal. Friends don't usually spend the night at each other's apartments." His face went pale. "I don't know what you think you know, but I know you've been seeing each other for months. I know about Meridian Bar. about the hotel on 5th Street, about the little love notes she saves in her phone. I know my wife is cheating on me, and I know you're the reason why. For a moment, I thought he might deny it, keep up the pretense that they were just workout buddies who happened to share intimate dinners and overnight visits. Instead, he surprised me. She's not happy, he said quietly. She hasn't been happy for a long time. So you decided to fix that by sleeping with her. It's not like that. It's not just physical. We connect. We have things in common. We make each other feel… vital? He blinked. Yeah. Vital. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I took a step closer, close enough to see that he was nervous, that whatever confidence he projected in his cycling classes didn't extend to confronting betrayed husbands. Let me explain something to you, Kai. That woman you're making feel so vital. She's my wife. Has been for 12 years. We have a life together, a home together, commitments that apparently don't mean much to either of you. She said you guys were basically over, that you were just going through the motions. Did she? And you believed that justified pursuing a married woman? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to stop seeing her, stop training her, stop texting her, stop meeting her for drinks at overpriced bars. You're going to find someone your own age who isn't married to someone else. And if I don't? I smiled, and it wasn't a friendly expression. Then I stopped being reasonable about this situation, and trust me, you don't want that. I left him standing in the studio, probably wondering if I'd meant that as a threat. I hadn't, exactly. But I'd meant it as a promise that the comfortable little arrangement he and Nola had built was about to become very uncomfortable. Time to go home and have a conversation with my wife. Nola was in the kitchen when I got home, preparing what looked like an elaborate salad with the kind of ingredients that cost more per pound than my lunch budget. She looked up when I walked in, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt, maybe, or just the general wariness that had become her default expression around me. "You're home early," she said. "I thought you were working late." "Change of plans. We need to talk." She set down her knife, and I noticed her hands were shaking slightly. "About what?" "About Kai. About Meridian Bar. About the fact that you've been lying to me for months." The color drained from her face, but she didn't try to deny it. Maybe she was tired of the deception, or maybe she just realized there was no point. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "Does it matter? The question is, how long you've been cheating." "I'm not…" She started to protest, then stopped. "It's complicated, Rowan." "No, it's really not. You're married to me and you're sleeping with him. That's the opposite of complicated." She leaned against the counter, suddenly looking older than her 38 years. "You don't understand. Things between us, they've been broken for so long." "So you decided to fix them by having an affair?" "I decided to find someone who actually sees me, who appreciates me, who doesn't make me feel like I'm slowly disappearing." "And you found that in a 27-year-old cycling instructor." "His age doesn't matter. What matters is how he makes me feel." "Vital?" She looked surprised that I knew the word. "Yes, vital, alive, like I matter." I stared at her, this woman I'd been married to for 12 years, and realized I was looking at a stranger. When had she become someone who could justify betrayal with self-help vocabulary? "You matter to me," I said. "You've always mattered to me." "No, I haven't. I've been convenient to you, reliable, part of your comfortable routine. But when's the last time you looked at me and actually saw me?" The question hung between us, and I found I didn't have a good answer. When had I stopped really seeing her? When had we both stopped trying? "So this is my fault?" I asked finally. "It's not about fault. It's about what we've become, what we've let ourselves become." "What we've become is married. That used to mean something." She was crying now, quiet tears that she wiped away with the back of her hand. It still means something. It just doesn't mean enough. So what happens now? You leave me for Captain Cardio? Set up house and live happily ever after on his cycling instructor salary? I don't know. I haven't figured that part out yet. Well, while you're figuring it out, you should know that I talked to him today. Explained the situation from my perspective. Her eyes widened. What did you say to him? I told him to stop seeing my wife. I was very reasonable about it. Rowan, you can't just... Actually, I can. And I did. And if he has any sense at all, he'll find someone else to make feel vital. She stared at me, and I could see her trying to process this new version of me, the one who confronted cycling instructors and demanded answers instead of just accepting whatever story she chose to tell. You're different, she said. You wanted me to be less comfortable. Congratulations. My phone buzzed. Text message from Ayla. Drinks at Murphy's. You look like you could use some friendly conversation. I showed Nola the phone. I'm going out. When I get back, I want you to have decided what you want. Him or me. This marriage or whatever fantasy you've built with your trainer. But I'm done being the understanding husband while you figure out your feelings. And if I choose him, then I'll help you pack. I left her standing in the kitchen, surrounded by the organic vegetables and expensive ingredients that were supposed to make her feel more authentic. At Murphy's, Ayla was waiting with a beer and the kind of straightforward sympathy that didn't require explanations. So, she said as I sat down, how bad was it? Bad, but also clarifying. Clarifying how? I took a long drink and considered the question. I've been so worried about losing her that I forgot I'd already lost her, maybe lost her a long time ago. And now? Now I'm done losing sleep over someone who's already made her choice. Ayla raised her glass. To clarity, I agreed. When I got home 3 hours later, Nola was gone. Her suitcase was missing from the closet, along with her favorite clothes and the expensive skincare products she'd started buying when she decided to become vital. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. I need some time to think. Staying at Linda's. We'll talk soon. N. I crumpled up the note and threw it away, then made myself a sandwich with regular, non-organic ingredients, and sat down to eat it in the quiet apartment. For the first time in months, the silence felt peaceful instead of tense. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. This is Kai. We should talk. I stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it without responding. I'd said everything I needed to say to Kai. If he wanted to continue pursuing my wife, that was between him and whatever conscience he might possess. But I was done making it easy for either of them. The next morning I called a lawyer. 6 months later, I was sitting at a corner table in a restaurant I'd never been to before, watching Ayla study the wine list with the same analytical intensity she brought to debugging code. The Pinot Grigio looks good, she said, or we could be adventurous and try the Riesling. Adventurous works for me. She smiled, and I realized how much I'd missed seeing genuine warmth in a woman's expression. Look at you, living dangerously. I'm a changed man. Ask anyone. The divorce had been finalized 2 weeks ago. Nola had gotten half of everything, which seemed fair enough considering I'd gotten my life back. She and Kai were still together, according to mutual friends, though apparently the reality of dating a cycling instructor wasn't quite as vital as the fantasy had been. Any regrets? Ayla asked as the waiter brought our wine. About the divorce? No. About the marriage? Some. I think we both stopped trying somewhere along the way, stopped seeing each other. And now? I looked across the table at this woman who'd become first a friend, then a confidant, then something more. At 31, she was 7 years younger than Nola, though I'd learned that age mattered less than compatibility, less than actually enjoying someone's company. Now I'm having dinner with someone who thinks my cynicism is charming instead of exhausting. Your cynicism is charming. Also, you're buying me expensive wine, which doesn't hurt. I laughed, remembering Nola's accusation that I'd made her feel old. Sitting here with Ayla, I felt younger than I had in years. Not because she was younger, but because we were building something new instead of trying to resurrect something that had already ended. To new beginnings, I said, raising my glass. To new beginnings, she agreed. Across the restaurant, I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure, Nola, sitting at a table near the window with someone who wasn't Kai. She looked tired, older somehow, and when she noticed me, her expression shifted through surprise, regret, and something that might have been envy. I raised my glass slightly in her direction, not a toast, just an acknowledgement. She nodded back, then turned her attention to her companion. Was that her? Ayla asked, following my gaze. That was her. How do you feel? I considered the question, surprised to discover the answer. Like someone I used to know. Ayla reached across the table and took my hand. Good answer. The waiter brought our appetizers, and we settled into the comfortable rhythm of conversation that had developed over months of late-night debugging sessions and coffee breaks that had gradually extended into lunch, then dinner, then whatever this was becoming. So, Ayla said, stealing a bite of my calamari, what's next for the newly vital Rowan Carrick? I was thinking about taking up cycling. She nearly choked on her wine. Seriously? No, definitely not seriously. I was thinking more along the lines of learning to cook something more sophisticated than sandwiches. I could teach you. I make an excellent risotto. That sounds perfect. And it did, not because it was exciting or vital or any of the other words Nola had used to justify blowing up our life together, but because it was real and honest and built on the radical idea that two people could actually enjoy each other's company without needing to reinvent themselves. Outside, it was starting to rain, but inside the restaurant, surrounded by the warmth of good food and better company, I felt exactly the right age for the life I was building.